Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to the MGMA Mindful Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Williams. Today, we're going to be discussing the critical topic of self-care. And for healthcare professionals, that's something that they find challenging to prioritize in their demanding roles. So joining us is an expert in this field, Michelle Zellner. She's the founder of Better Beings. She's a health and happiness strategist, an author, a public speaker, and a corporate wellness trainer. Michelle, first of all, I just want to welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So what led you to this field in the first place of wellness, of coaching? Tell us a little bit about that kind of transformation, that pathway to where you are now.
Yeah, so it was all very unplanned, a very organic accident, quite honestly. It started out 28 years ago as a personal trainer, which also was by accident. I actually went to grad school for my master's in kinesiology. I thought I was going to be a sports psychologist and work with athletes with eating disorders. I quickly learned that you had to get a PhD in psychology and then specialize. And I was like, oh, no. We're done with school. But at the time, I was working at a gym just at the front desk, and there was a gal there who was a trainer, and she was going to have a baby, and she said, you should get certified. You'd be great. You'd love it. Now, mind you, this was way back before personal training was a thing, right? And so I thought, okay, this sounds good. And then I started doing it and was like, wow, this is everything I love. It's helping people build their bodies. And really what it came down to was it was human connection. And getting to know them on a personal level and understanding, their struggles and how that stressful day led them to eating, or they had no energy to work out, or, all the other things that life piles on. So as the wellness industry evolved and I evolved, I really got more into the how and the why, and really just truly wanted to help people be better human beings. So my business name is Better Beings, better minds, better bodies, better beings. And then it all just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah. We're recording this. It's the middle of January. We know that that's one of the major resolutions that people have, like, I want to go to the gym, I want to lose weight, I want to eat better, all these things. I'm sure you've seen this because this is your field of expertise. I've seen some studies that right as we're recording this, kind of mid-January, is when you see people start dropping off. Talk about that, and maybe if you can give us a hack or anything else that we can do so we don't sort of start dropping off in mid-January or towards the end of January.
Well, I was that person too who had all this motivation, right? I'm going to try to do this and try to do that at the beginning of the year. And you try, and then there's a little obstacle that comes in your way, and you're like, oh, well, I tried and I can't. And then all of a sudden it's January 15th, and you're like, I'll try next year, right? I really think we don't set ourselves up for success. And what I mean by that is there are so many elements to the process, and yet we just want to dive in and get the outcome. So it really starts with being realistic, right? What are you realistically capable of doing? Not what you used to do or what you think you should do or what you wish you could do, but in the real life that you're living today, your capability, your capacity. What are you willing and able to devote to any aspect of your well-being, whether it's fitness or it's modifying nutrition habits or it's, prioritizing your sleep, whatever it is, and to let go of this fixation on the outcome and really just embrace the process and embrace the things that you're in charge of, which are your actions.
Okay. You and I were talking right before we hit record here, and you told me something really neat. So you have spoken to MGMA audiences before. However, you have spoken to them in the Alaska MGMA. Talk about that experience. I've never been to Alaska. That sounds kind of neat. I don't know if you went there in person or if that was virtual. Talk about that.
Actually, that was my second year in a row being invited to come speak for a big audience. The prior year, I was invited by the American Heart Association to speak at their big Go Red for Women luncheon to be their keynote. And a woman in that audience was on the MGMA board, and she said, I want you to come be one of our keynotes for the conference in 2023. So it was fantastic. It's such a beautiful place, and I mean, the people are incredible, and obviously the line of work that the MGMA community is in is a very caring and giving one, right? And this idea of self-care, well, we're so busy taking care of everybody else, we don't have time to take care of ourselves.
Right.
And obviously that isn't going to work out well in the long run. So I did my permission to self-care keynote for them, and I think it was pretty well received, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
Good. What time of year did you go?
I was there in April for that one. The prior year, I was in Fairbanks at the end of early March and in Anchorage mid-March.
Okay.
I also have gone back in June to experience all of its glory in the summer, and I will be a frequent visitor to Alaska for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you mentioned the keynote. It's one of the keynotes you do, but it's called Permission to Self-Care. This is particularly important to healthcare workers because they're part of their profession. They're serving others. They are caring for others. And so talk about that. Talk about this particular keynote, how you crafted it, designed it, and some of the takeaways from it.
Well, what I have found is a couple of things. One, this concept of self-care is very squishy, and even how we define that, right?
Okay.
So I think your kind of stereotypical images, which I do see we've broken away from that recently, but it's the pedicure, it's the spa, it's the bubble bath, it's the I'm going fly fishing.
Right.
All of those are fantastic. None of those are self-care. Self-care is how do you take care of a human being?
Okay.
Right? If you're going to take care of your dog, you feed your dog certain things, you give it water, you let it play, you treat it with love and kindness, you take it for walks. Well, how do you take care of your human?
Yeah.
What are you feeding it? Are you letting it play? Are you being kind to it? Are you giving it rest, repair, and recovery? Are you moving it? Very often we're not because we're so busy taking care of everyone and everything else. And it is that trait of people in a profession such as this one, the trait that makes them so amazing as humans and amazing at what they do, which is also the trait that eventually leads to their own lack of well-being.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest problem with self-care is you have to do it yourself.
Okay.
That means, number one, you have to believe that you're worthy, that you are as important as any other human that you're taking care of.
Yeah.
And many people don't believe that. They believe everyone and everything else is more important than them. And I'm on a mission to help change that mindset.
Okay.
I really believe you are the most important human in your life. And if you don't be the best version of you, then you really are giving everybody else a less than version of that.
Okay. What's a first step then to change that mindset to, I guess, convince yourself, trick yourself, whatever you want to call it, so that you do believe you're worth it?
Ooh, that's a loaded question because, I mean, everybody is very different, right? We have our internal beliefs that have been developed a long time ago from a lot of different experiences and different influences. So I would just first ask somebody just ask that question. Do they believe they're worthy, right? If you could put 10 people in a room and you're one of them, which one person is not deserving of a healthy, happy life? Pick the one.
Yeah.
And if you're picking you, well, why? Why is your human any less important? If you realize you are worthy, then it's probably just a matter of I haven't found the right solutions and strategies to actually not just put myself first, which I hope we get there, but to even put myself on the list.
Okay.
And I know one of the big obstacles is the all or nothing mindset. I can't do it all, so I do nothing.
Okay.
Or I need to do all of these things to have that outcome, and I can't do all of these things, so why bother doing anything because I'm not going to get the outcome. And it's really buying into the idea that the cumulative effect of all the little things we do over and over and over, we call those our habits, right?
Yeah.
The cumulative effect of those habits is what's going to dictate the outcome. And while we can neglect ourselves for a little bit of time and be okay, you can't neglect yourself as a lifestyle and be okay.
Okay. You brought up the idea of habits a couple of times there, and that is key. I'll tell you, I don't know if when you work with people, if you kind of begin to explore what time of day, what kind of person they are time of day wise. I know I'm a morning person. If I don't get the things done now I'm not sure if I'm supposed to call it self-care or whatever we call it, but the things that I do that address what I know make me a happier person, that might be get up early in the morning and meditate, practice yoga, do some other form of exercise. There might be some other, maybe journaling, some things like that I know once the heat of the day begins, so to speak, there's a really good chance, almost a 90% chance, I am not going to do those things later in the day, because it's just, whether it's just actual time, not having the time, or if it's any mental work or creative work, I'm just done, later in the day or in the evening. So do you assess that time? Like, are you a morning person? Are you an evening person? Are you I go work out at lunch person? Do you assess that with people, or have them assess that for themselves initially? What's that look like?
Yeah, I'm just like you, Daniel. If I could repeat the hours of 5 a.m. to 1 and just put that on repeat, I would be like top of every game in the world. Ideally, we are able to design our lives in the way that our human would prefer, right? And we all have a different cadence to life, and yet we all have demands because of jobs, because of families, because of things that we want to do. So I think it is important to acknowledge when is it the best fit for you, and then we're going to still do the best we can in the real life that we live. Right. And if I have these 10 things that I want to do in the morning, but I don't have time to do all 10 things, well, then let's pick one, let's pick 3, let's pick whatever. And maybe there is something that I actually can do in the afternoon or in the evening. Okay. I've just told myself that I can't because I have developed this belief that I can't. So maybe I'm going to find one thing that, you know what, there is this one thing I can do. And same for me with creative things. I need to be laser focused, silence. I need to be fresh in my brain. And that usually isn't in like the middle of the afternoon. Yeah. I do find though that I get a little bit of a second wind right around 6 p.m. Okay. So I've decided I can have my downtime, right? I can have that downtime. And then when I know I have a little burst of rejuvenation, I'm going to tackle this one thing. I'm going to work on it for 30 minutes and we're going to call that a win.
Okay, I love that. So in looking at your keynote, you have something called talking about being the boss of oneself. Is this an acronym? Okay, let's hear about what being the boss is.
Yeah, well, you are the boss of you, right? Okay. I look at each of our own lives as a project. So Michelle is the project manager of Michelle's life. Okay. And if you're the project manager of anything and you want your project to turn out a certain way, you're the boss. So you have to do a bunch of things. So I'm the boss of me. The first thing as a boss is I'm going to need to be quiet and be still and breathe. Okay. Most humans don't like to be quiet, don't like to be still, and we're not good at breathing. Okay. So those three things are critical because you can only gather information if you are quiet and if you're still, and breathing's just a good thing to do, right? Yeah. So that's the B. The O is observe. Okay. So I'm going to literally turn my eyeballs in and just observe what's going on in my mind, my thoughts, my energy. Where am I? I'm not judging. I'm not criticizing. I'm not problem solving. I'm just gathering information. The first S is scan head to toe, because our humans are always trying to send us signs when something's not quite right. Yeah. Right? So are there any physical signs? Maybe I have muscle tension. Maybe I have chronically elevated blood pressure. Maybe I have some digestive disorders. Maybe I just feel lethargic, right? I just want to gather more information. Let me get my signals from my human. Once I've gathered all that information, then the second S is serve. Okay. So how can I, Michelle, serve my human to get me to a better place based on all the information I just gathered? Maybe there's something I can do in the moment. Maybe there is a lifestyle habit. If I started engaging in it, it would elevate me. Maybe there's this big thing that I've been avoiding, I don't want to deal with, but I know if I do, it would probably serve me very well. Okay. And so it's just a way to get back in touch with ourselves and really get to know yourself. Because once you know yourself, you can then figure out what to do with yourself to hopefully advance your project and get it to where you want it to be. Yeah.
People who have listened to Mindful Medicine know that I'm a student of mindfulness, and so that sounded had a very mindfulness approach to it. Is that something you have studied, or will tell us about that? No, not really.
No, it just makes sense to me. I mean, a lot of what I teach and talk on, I have a little bit of background in it, but I don't have a PhD in anything. I haven't done a lot of research. It just kind of makes sense of how a human operates. And I think about, the way humans were designed. We were designed to live outside, not in boxes. We were designed to interact with other humans in a whole variety of ways. We were designed to operate on a day-night schedule where we hunted and gathered and moved our bodies all day in a variety of ways. We ate real food. We did all this during the daytime, and at nighttime, when animals that wanted to eat us came out, we hid for protection. We got very quiet, and then the brain sent all kinds of signals that we're sleepy, and there was no reason to ignore the signal.
Right.
So you went to sleep, and then your body and brain did all the rest, repair, recovery, hormonal reset, rebalance, organized thoughts, catalog memories, all the things that happen when you sleep. And then the sun came out, shut down the production of melatonin, triggered the release of cortisol and adrenaline, and you woke up and you did it all over. Right? Like that
sounds easy.
That was life. Well, now we call that something, right?
Okay.
Now we call that the healthy lifestyle.
Okay.
Well, it used to just be called life.
Yeah.
But now we live in a different world, a different environment where we are literally trying to force our human to exist in an environment it wasn't designed for. And that means we have choices. And every choice we make means another choice wasn't made. And, because we have convenience, we have easy things, very often that easy choice in the moment will lead to something harder later if that easy choice becomes the habit.
Okay. At MGMA, we have a book club, and currently we're actually talking about it tomorrow, but it's called From Strength to Strength. It's written by Arthur Brooks, and it really addresses the second, he calls it the second curve in life, but the second part of life, and it really addresses people who are, he calls it strivers, people that are, I guess you could sort of assimilate that they are type A people and they're just driven. And a lot of things you're saying is I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to observe instead of just driving forward. So if we are talking about people who are driven that way or by their environment, a lot of our listeners are working in very stressful medical practice spaces, hospitals. It could be go, and they're having staffing shortages. So we're not calling it an off switch, I don't think, but it's an observation switch. How do you give yourself permission to maybe slow down a little, which helps you be way more productive down the road? Help us understand that.
Yeah, it's so hard to project, right, that what I'm doing now could maybe have some consequences for me later.
Right.
And I actually call this the YBI, the young, beautiful, and invincible.
Okay.
And this is generally like the 35 and under population. We can do all kinds of things, and look at us, we're amazing. So why would I do anything different? But it definitely relates to maybe a striver or someone who likes that kind of fast pace of life. So I always encourage people to separate your unique named individual self from the human being that's operating you.
Okay.
Whatever Michelle's preferences are, her human still needs certain things, right? Whatever Daniel's preferences are, your human still requires certain things in order to thrive. So even if you're a striver or we have these big demands, at some point you still have to take care and nurture and nourish your human. And I have a mantra, it is hard now or harder later. And it always pans out that way. And I have seen many, many people who go because they can and they like it and the job requires it and life requires it. And then at some point down the line, they're not working and serving anybody because they don't have the physical, mental, or emotional capacity to do that. So I think it's just to remind ourselves that life is a marathon. And if you operate at a sprint pace, at some point, you're going to give out, right? And it is those physical and emotional and mental consequences that we think will never happen to us. I hope not.
Yeah.
And yet, if we understand how a human operates, you can't neglect a human's needs and think that there aren't going to be some consequences at some point.
Yeah. So in the remaining couple of questions, let's talk about stress and burnout, because that is a major issue with healthcare workers. what are some tools, some techniques, some self-assessments, any way you want to word that where you can really help people who are listening who may be under incredible stress right now or even already in a burnout phase? What are some things that they can do?
Yeah, I mean, it's first acknowledging that that's where you are, right? So are you noticing behavior changes in your sleep pattern, changes in your eating patterns, losing a sense of joy for things that normally you would be interested, right? Maybe social withdrawal, starting to fall into some cynicism or like apathy,
Right.
Any kind of change in your behaviors, your mood, your energy, your attitude, your patterns. Those are pretty good indications that we're headed down a path if we're not there already. What do you do? I mean, unfortunately, there are many professions, and the healthcare profession is one of them, where the nature of the job puts you at much greater risk, not just for burnout, but even for something like compassion fatigue. And very often those two can run parallel to each other and then start to really influence and impact each other. I think it just goes back to you deciding if you are worthy, and then setting some boundaries. Learning to let go of people-pleasing, learning to let go of perfectionism. A lot of people will say that they have a hard time saying no. That's actually not true. They're really good at saying no.
Right.
They say no to themselves all the time.
Wow.
So it's recognizing that you deserve a yes, and then probably getting out of that all or nothing mode, right? And recognizing that, yes, okay, meditation, let's say that. Well, I'm not good at it. Why would you be? You're not supposed to be good at it. It's a skill you have to practice.
This is true.
Well, I don't have 20 minutes. Okay, cool. What do you have, 5? Yeah. Oh, great. Let's do it for 5 minutes. But 5 minutes isn't going to do anything. What's going to do more than not doing 5 minutes, right? So it's recognizing that the cumulative effect of a lot of small things, no, you're not going to have this magical outcome right away, but it's starting to build those foundations and to build the habits. And I think that's really for everybody, not just, the MGMA audience, but I think it's just it's a mindset shift that would help almost everybody. And I mean, I live there too in the all or nothing mode, in this, fixation on the outcome. And if I didn't get the outcome when I thought I should, then, well, it doesn't work. And really most things don't work that way. So, if you are chronically stressed and headed to burnout, you're not helping anyone.
Right.
And nobody is, going to get that benefit, especially if you are eventually taking a medical leave of absence.
Right.
Right? Or something like that. So again, it goes back to hard now or harder later.
Yeah.
And deciding that you're worthy of the hard.
Yeah. Last question then. We've been talking more in the context of work and how it impacts you that way. But a lot of our listeners, they either have families, they have friends, they have other people they care about and care about them outside of work. How do we achieve that work-life balance where you give yourself the permission there too to not just be a workaholic, but also to be really present for those loved ones?
Yeah. Oh, that phrase, work-life balance. It is like nails on a chalkboard for me for many years.
How should we say it? Is there a new phrase to use?
I mean, here's the thing. If you are working, work is part of your life.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really just creating balance. You don't find balance, you choose to create balance. And yes, of course, when we're in our income earning years, that is going to take up a big chunk of our time and energy, right? That's by nature. I also think that if you get really clear on your values and your priorities, right, get some real clarity. And I mean, a lot of people will write down something like their health and their family, except that you're not devoting time or energy to your health and family, so it must not be that important to you. So I would say let's first get clarity and bust out the list and write down all the things that matter to you in life.
Right.
Because then we can evaluate if we are devoting our time, money, and energy in the ways that we say are important. And if we're out of alignment, then we're going to start to try to make some shifts so that we align. And it comes back to boundaries. It comes back to leaning on your support group, working together with your team, whether that is with your significant other, your friends, right? The people who recognize what you do and can appreciate what you do, and also that you want to have this great relationship with. Ultimately, it takes cooperation on all levels, but it has to start with you, right? You have to kind of be the ringleader of that project.
Yeah. Well, Michelle Zellner, I want to thank you for joining us on the MGMA Mindful Medicine Podcast. I have the opportunity to hear you again speak later this week in front of an MGMA audience. That's going to be really awesome.
Yeah.
But any final thoughts or any resources, anywhere you would point people to who might be listening? I see that if they want to go to your website, it's betterbeings.net. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else, or if they get to that website, is there anything, because sometimes it's then navigating the space, anything you might want to point out that's on that site as well?
Yeah, well, I've written a couple of books.
Okay.
So if you just type my name into Amazon, they pop right up. One of them is The You Revolution, The Journey of a Better Being. So kind of my own memoir, but with all the things I teach and talk on and learned along the way to help people be better humans. And then I wrote a little nutrition guide as well. I have my own podcast, the Be a Better Being podcast, which I have incredible guests.
Yeah.
I write a blog. I have a newsletter, so people can subscribe to that. And then, of course, follow me on socials and LinkedIn. Try to put useful content out when I can.
Awesome. Well, we will put direct links to all of those resources in the episode show notes. And so everybody, please go to betterbeings.net, learn more about how you can take better care about yourself, listen to Michelle's podcast and read her blog. And until then, thank you so much, everyone, for taking care of yourself and for being MGMA podcast listeners.